Hi guys, and welcome back to Pixel Peak.
We've got some good news for you this week.
Starting off this week, BlizzCon happened with plenty of game announcements to go with.
That sounds interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
Next, we have an update on the Apple versus Epic lawsuit over Fortnite.
You know, I've actually been waiting for them to give us an update on that.
I know, right? We haven't heard anything for months.
After that, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War has new features for their second multiplayer season.
Can't wait to see what's been added.
Oh, I can't agree even more.
Finally, we have good news for gamers and lovers of comics and manga. Animal Crossing is getting its own manga this September.
You know, that will be interesting to read, but also talking about Nintendo, this week's announcement segment will bring back Ruby Hall to talk about the recent Nintendo Direct announcement.
And for Game Review, we'll have Haley Cipher with the new Scott Pilgrim game.
As always, we hope you enjoy this week's episode. I'm Bryce Gates.
And I'm Kristen Lawrence, and we hope you enjoy your stay here on Pixel Peak.
Blizzard celebrated its 30th anniversary with BlizzCon last week, which occurred completely online and showcased some huge reveals in the opening keynotes. First up, they announced that the Blizzard Arcade Collection, which is a bundle of remastered games from the publisher's earlier days. The pack includes Lost Vikings, Rock and Roll Racing, Blackthorn, and all of which have already been released to the PC, Switch, Xbox One, and PS4. Diablo 4, on the other hand, won't be releasing this year, but a new trailer was released showing off the Rogue character class. In Diablo 2 Resurrected, which was also announced as a remaster of the original game and will be released to both last-gen and current-gen consoles, as well as the PC and Switch. An expansion for World of Warcraft Classic has been announced called Burning Crusade. A release date which wasn't included, but Blizzard did add. The Dark Portal reopens in 2021. World of Warcraft Modern will get its own update for the Shadowlands expansion called Chains of Dominion. Overwatch 2 has also gotten some more announcements, primarily 2 new maps called Rome and New York, as well as weather effects and new enemy units. Lastly, updated models for the Widowmaker, Reaper, McCree, and Pharah were all released.
We've finally gotten an update on the Apple versus Epic lawsuit for the first time since September. If you haven't heard about this suit before, it came about as Epic Games implemented a direct payment system in the mobile version of their game Fortnite, which allowed payments from the players to avoid the 30% cut that Apple takes. Apple decidedly removed Fortnite from the App Store, and Epic Games responded with a prepared lawsuit. The recent update revealed that Apple sent a subpoena to Valve back in November, requesting huge caches of their sales data. This includes the name of every product available on Steam, as well as their sales data, dates of release, and all the specifications of their storefront. Apple has not offered any form of recompensation for this massive undertaking, and since Steam is in no way related to the mobile gaming sphere, Valve has refused their request. In response, Apple has cited that Samsung has accepted similar requests in their past. Although some key differences lie in that Samsung deals in the mobile industry and is also a public company, meaning that these documents are created and stored on a regular basis. This contrasts with Valve, which is a private company and does not store the sorts of data that Apple is requesting. In other news, Tim Sweeney, the CEO of Epic Games, has posted a long Twitter thread where he produces several arguments to the public. He first claims that Apple allows Netflix and Amazon Video to take direct payments from their viewers, but insists that game developers cannot do the same due to Apple's restrictions. Another thing to note is that Apple has tried to condemn the access of games that are built on the Unreal Engine, which Epic Games develops, due to the loose connection to Epic. Lastly, Sweeney calls Apple a monopoly, which adamantly goes against any company that tries to break their conglomerate.
On February 25th, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War and Warzone kicked off their second multiplayer season and have been welcomed in a new wave of features to celebrate. For Cold War, 4 new maps, 2 of which are titled Apocalypse and Miami Strike, have been added to the map pool. Several new weapons have also been introduced into the game, featuring melee weapons and a new SMG. Familiar Score Strike for the Zombie series has also been transitioned into multiplayer, with the Death Machine, a handheld minigun, making an appearance. Out of all of these new additions, there is one thing that has fans quite excited about. Activision has been teasing a new large-scale zombies experience titled Outbreak, which is set in the Ural Mountains and could be one of the biggest zombie maps ever created. Some things that we could be looking forward to with this new map are plenty of areas to explore, teleporters and portals, and even vehicles. Lastly, when it comes to Warzone, a number of new points of interest have been appearing across the map, some including a mysterious ship last spotted on Rebirth Island, and even a teaser at some underground activity that could potentially change the map. Launch times on these new features vary across the board, but we can expect most of these additions to come during the launch week, while others may wait until later in the season. For most updates on the Season 2 features, make sure to follow along with Treyarch's blog posts.
Have you ever wondered what your villagers are doing when you are not making an appearance on your Animal Crossing New Horizons island? Come September of this year, we can expect the game to be receiving its very own manga translated into English. The comedy manga series titled Deserted Island Diary will tell stories of what your villagers are up to when you are logged off of the game. Not only will this series provide some more insight on what happens around your island, but also tips on how to be a good island representative, and funny goofs of a variety of villagers will also be featured. If you are one to pay attention to Twitter, then you may know that the Animal Crossing page has shared silly and adorable 4-panel comics in the past explaining simple things like controls or DIYs, which could give us an idea on what the manga could look like. Several spin-off mangas have been previously created about the game, but this will be the first one translated into English. Lastly, Deserted Island Diary is an ongoing project with new volumes expected to be released twice per year after the initial release of September 21st, 2021.
Hello everybody, I'm Haley Cipher, one of the associate producers of Pixel Peak, and I'm here today to review Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game. It was developed and published by Ubisoft, originally released in 2010, though sales were discontinued in 2014 due to a license expiring. The game was released alongside the now sort of cult classic movie, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. The game follows the same premise of the movie, starting off with our main character, Scott, meeting Ramona Flowers for the first time at a party. As follows, he falls in love, but first must defeat her 7 evil exes. These are seen as the bosses at the end of each stage. The game opens up with a flash warning, and then the classic Universal Studios movie opening, complete with the theme music. There are a few different options for characters to play: Scott, Ramona, Kim, Steven Stills, and Wallace. All characters have a few different style options that you can choose as well. I found it interesting that Ramona had an option with brown hair, kind of matching to Scott's, though I never remember that being a thing. In addition, we have her classic blue and pink hair colors as well. Having her huge hammer as a weapon is a plus when playing as her. I personally loved playing as Kim, and during my first playthrough I kept playing her up until Evil X number 3. I just couldn't beat that level with her. Though I love how she can cartwheel from one side of the screen to the other without taking damage to get ahead of her enemies. It is a good way to move positions and avoid attacks. You quickly level up your playable moves and combos by defeating enemies. You also gain coins from every enemy knocked out, which you can then use in various different shops to purchase food that can increase gut health or HP. There are also special shops where you can purchase extra lives and other goodies that aren't all necessarily useful. So at the beginning of each level you're gifted 3 lives, and when those 3 lives are out, it's game over. If you have some gut health points left over, they can transfer into HP and give you basically an extra life. So there is a classic story mode with this game, which will take you through beating all the X's. There are also 4 extra game modes, including Boss Rush, Survival Horror, Battle Royale, and Dodgeball. Out of these, I had the most fun with Boss Rush, really because I like getting to fight only the bosses and only practice out moves on them. You have the option to play online as well and check leaderboards, though a Ubisoft account is required to be set up in order to do that. I honestly just had a ton of fun playing this game. As a huge fan of the movie and the comics, this filled my heart. The 8-bit style of this game looks incredible, while each level is accompanied with killer set designs. While going to fight Matthew Patel, you're walking the streets of a Toronto neighborhood, and I think it looks super cool. Next, you're going to fight Ramona's ex, Lucas Lee, who is a famous movie star, and the set is filled with paparazzi and directors recording and cutting fight scenes. Then you're off to fight Todd, the vegan boss, whose murderous bass riffs knock you through walls. That reminded me so much of the movie. They even had the vegan police bust down on Todd. You can also skip through the subspace highways. Inside are piggy banks that you can hit for extra cash. The various subspace settings were really interesting, and I liked the design a lot of this game. There was definitely a lot of love put into it. That's something that you can definitely see with the soundtrack. The soundtrack was done in full by chiptune band Anamanaguchi, and I've actually seen them live before, and they are amazing, and this soundtrack is great, even standalone. One of the many highlights of this game was that you get to fight Nega Scott. That was the highest on my list of things I wanted to be able to do in this game, so that was amazing. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Also, you get to pass by characters such as Knives' mom with her groceries, and that's another thing. By pressing the left bumper, you basically summon Knives, and she'll gift you some gut points and maybe a kiss or something. It's kind of helpful, but mostly just an interesting quirk of the game. I did, however, experience some minor glitches while playing at times. For example, sometimes I got stuck, unable to move onwards in the map because there was an invisible enemy to defeat. It would attack me and I could attack it, but I could not see it. That was kind of annoying. Other than that, everything was pretty easy to learn and easy to handle. A major aspect to the game is fighting Gideon Graves as well. Basically Ramona's big boss ex. I would say that the battle was as grand as I thought it should have been as well. And I won't spoil the ending, but definitely different than the movie's real and alternate ending, and it was a fun finish. I would rate this game a top of the mountain game. It was a super fun beat 'em up with options for multiplayer, and I think a really long shelf life. I can imagine myself picking this up and playing it again many, many more times.
Hey Ruby, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me back.
We're so glad to have you. Well, today we're talking about Nintendo's latest Nintendo Direct, and it seems like there was a lot to this one. You ready to get into it?
Yeah, there's so much to talk about. I'm really excited.
Yeah, definitely. And now, what were some of the biggest things announced during the Nintendo Direct?
So this Direct had so much, given that this was their first Direct in a while. It's like over an hour long. But some of the biggest things in there include Splatoon 3, which is the latest game in the Splatoon series, Skyward Sword HD, which is a remaster of the original Skyward Sword that came out on the Wii about 10 years ago, Mario Golf Super Rush, which is the newest Mario Golf game. It comes with some new modes and some interesting ways to play, and Project Triangle Strategy. That's not its final name, according to the developers. It's from the same studio who made Octopath Traveler in a similar art style, and it kind of goes through that Fire Emblem-y kind of strategy game. So
Interesting.
It's really a lot to look forward to.
Yeah. Now, of the games that you just mentioned, which one are you most excited to check out for yourself?
So the thing I'm most excited to play is Splatoon 3. I am a huge fan of the Splatoon series. I think it's a really unique game with its innovative gameplay where you can play, or it's a shooter and you can play as your humanoid character, or you can turn into a squid and swim around in the ink on the floor. And there's many different game modes involved, and it has a really cool universe, and it just has a really nice style. And I'm very excited to see the newest installment because I have hundreds of hours in the original 2 games, and I'm probably going to put in the same amount or even more in Splatoon 3 when it comes out in 2022.
Now, being such a big fan of the game, do you know some of the new and interesting things coming out with Splatoon 3?
So they're doing quite a couple of things. They're adding in new weapons. In the trailer, they were showing off the new splat bow, which I think is really interesting. They're also going to expand on the lore some more. Like, we're going to a new area. It's kind of a desert wasteland. You can see the Eiffel Tower falling over, and I think it's really cool. It gives you some Fallout Mad Max vibes. And one thing that I like a lot is they're keeping the player influence on the game. They did the same thing with Splatoon 2 and Splatfest, where they chose a topic in there, brought it to Splatoon 2, and they're doing the same thing where earlier, about like a year ago, they had a final Splatfest between Order and Chaos won. And looking at the trailer, you can see that influence, which is essentially selected by the player base. And I think that's really cool. I love that they keep doing this, and it makes me super excited to see Splatoon 3 when it finally comes out.
That's definitely a great way to get your fans involved and excited for a game. On a slightly different topic, what can you tell us about the Hyrule Warriors expansion pass that is being released?
So the Hyrule Warriors expansion pass will be adding new content to the Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity game that came out earlier last year. It adds a bunch of new characters, it'll add new levels, outfits, weapon types, etc. So it gives you new ways to play the game and also some new content to go through, which is really nice because a lot of people love this game, and I think a lot of people will be looking forward to seeing this. They're going to be doing about 2 waves of content. First one will be released in May, and they're making this expansion pass like $20, which I think is nice. Nintendo is pretty merciful through DLC prices, so I think this is going to be pretty popular, and it's exciting just to see new things.
Yeah, I think like you said, it's good to have something to look forward to for May. Now, what about the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword and its new Nintendo Switch adaptation? Like, how are the controls different as compared to the original Wii version?
So the biggest thing is they added button controls, which is huge. The original Wii version, its gimmick was you got to swing around the Wii controller like it was a sword, which a lot of people thought was cool because swinging around a sword is fun. But there's also a pretty sizable group of people who didn't like the motion controls because they either felt clunky or they're also inaccessible to some players who may not like have the space or the ability to swing around a Wii remote like that. So it really makes the game more accessible to this group of people, those who aren't really a big fan of motion controls. But the Switch version still has the motion controls option if you want to swing around your Joy-Con like a sword. I think it's a really great addition. Skyward Sword HD will, also bring graphics improvements as well as this new control scheme, so more people can get to enjoy the game, which is always a good thing.
Oh yeah, I think more options are definitely better. Now, you as a fan, what would you like to see announced from Nintendo in the future?
I think the biggest thing I'm excited for that we didn't see today was Breath of the Wild 2 news. I know they didn't have anything to announce, which is okay. They can take their time. I'm really excited to see this game. I want it to be the best that it could possibly be. I was a huge fan of the original Breath of the Wild. I think it's a masterful game. I've had a ton of fun playing it. And Breath of the Wild 2 seems like it's going to have those Majora's Mask vibes, which I'm really excited for because Majora's Mask was a great Zelda game. So I'm really excited to see this whenever Nintendo is ready to announce it. They can take their time, but as much as I would like to see more news, I really want to see the game the best that it can possibly be. I also want to see more about Splatoon 3. The trailer dropped a lot of things, but it still leaves us with a lot of questions, like what happened in the lore, or how the new gameplay is going to feel, or what are the new modes and whatnot. So I'm really excited to see more info about Splatoon 3. I assume we're going to get some in due time in anticipation of its release date in 2022. And as usual, I always want to see something about Mother 3 being localized in the US, but unfortunately we didn't get that. Hopefully we do eventually, but I can always dream, even though it may not be realistic.
Well, that's definitely something to look forward to in the future, hopefully. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us and joining us this week. Now back to Kristen and Bryce back in the studio.
Thank you, Ruby, for this week's analysis segment.
Yeah, Ruby, we greatly appreciate it.
That sure was a lot of announcements this week, though.
Yeah, BlizzCon seemed really fun this year with everything being online.
I'm excited to see how E3 happens now.
Totally.
Well, who knows? As always, we have new Pixel Peak episodes coming out every Monday afternoon at noon. You can find them on watchapptv.com, Sky Best channels 20 and 1020, Spectrum channels 198, and on App State's campus television channel 23.3.
And you can always get reminded of upcoming episodes by following our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram accounts at Pixel Peak App TV.
Of course, we wouldn't have had this incredible episode if it wasn't for our great crew. Thanks to our writers Rebecca Larson, Josh Bill, and Zach White, along with the Nintendo analysis Ruby Hall, and producers Nick Corbin, Elise Taylor, Haley Cipher, and Jacob Barber for another week of impeccable gaming industry content.
Thank you all for watching, and we hope you enjoyed your stay here on Pixel Peak.